something that the municipality can do. We can add more restrictions, or we can just completely forbid it. But right now, our zoning bylaw has the right restrictions, or has proper restrictions to limit them, at least on Front Road. The bylaw asks for a lot that is a minimum 10 acres, and the kennel needs to be installed at a minimum 100 meters from any neighboring dwelling.
Yeah, so that would include dwellings on either side and across the street from the kennel.
Yes, so exactly.
That's quite a distance separation. It's over 300 feet. So it's pretty substantial. So the question then becomes, as Jesse and I were talking about, Front Road is unique in the township in that, especially on the north side, is a huge amount of housing. And so whether or not some additional restrictions should be placed on kennels on Front Road, whether or not that's appropriate to increase restrictions, setbacks, or lot area, or even prohibiting them. Jesse, after you and I talked about that, I don't know that prohibiting kennels on Front Road would be necessarily a good idea, but because of the amount of residential development along there, council could consider increasing the restrictions. Instead of, say, having a 10-acre minimum lot, maybe doubling that to 20 acres, and maybe increasing the minimum frontage requirement, so that we're ensuring that if a kennel were to be established, it would have an oversized lot, greater separation distance between any existing housing on the road. That I think would probably just eliminate any potential kennel on the north side of Front Road. I think that you'd be hard pressed to be able to find a property that was at least 20 acres on the north side of Front Road. And then, so the issue becomes whether or not you could find a property on the south side of Front Road that would be big enough, and there would be opportunities there. The additional controlling factor is if on the south side of Front Road the zoning is agriculture, then the minimum lot size, even if you were to permit a kennel in the agricultural zone, the minimum lot size would have to be 40 hectares for a new lot. An existing non-conforming lot would have to be at least the 20 acres. So generally a kennel would not be permitted in an agricultural zone, but would be permitted in the rural zone. So some of the land on the south side of Front Road is agriculture. And so you wouldn't expect to see a kennel permitted there. But if the land on the south side of Front Road is zoned rural, then a kennel could be permitted. The question is, do you make the minimum lot size and minimum lot frontage bigger because of its location near a lot of existing residential development? So that is an option for council.
On the north side, Doug, I don't think there'd be any danger of a kennel, because I don't think you could go and get 10 acres. And the value of the land on the river, I would very well bet there's nobody going to put a kennel on 10 acres on the edge of the river at the price of land.
I agree. That would be extremely unusual for someone to want to put a kennel on the north side of Front Road. Those are premium waterfront lots. That's going to be mostly housing.
I happen to live on the front road, and I know the properties, and I don't think you can go and get 10 acres anywhere in East Hawkesbury along the river.
I think you're probably right. I didn't check. I looked at the zoning bylaw to kind of sort of estimate the typical lot size, but I certainly didn't go looking to see if I could find something that was at least 10 acres. I agree. I doubt that you could.
I myself, we could, so it's uniform through the municipality. The 10 acres seems sufficient, in my opinion. I don't know how council feels, but that's my feeling.
Yeah, well, that's basically why the bylaw was drafted the way it is. That minimum lot area and separation distance is pretty standard. It's not just East Hawkesbury that has that requirement of 10 acres and 100-meter separation from an existing dwelling. That is fairly common in zoning bylaws throughout Ontario.
Well, I would suggest maybe increasing from 100 meters to maybe 200 meters. That way we avoid noise complaints, maybe, or diminish the noise complaint.
And for all kennels, not just front road, make it for all.
All of them. Keep the 10 acres area and increase the distance between another dwelling and the kennel. I don't know how council feel about that. I think 100 meters is not sufficient.
I like that idea. I don't know if
agree.
members of council.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah.
Just another question. I don't know much about dog kennels, but what is how many dogs are considered a kennel?
So the bylaw states, our animal control bylaw states that when you have, you're allowed to have 4 dogs per household. If you have more than 4, then you need to obtain a kennel license.
Okay. One more question. Let's say you're living in an apartment building. There's 4 apartments. So each apartment's allowed 4 dogs?
Each dwelling, yeah.
Each apartment.
Well, that's a good question, but I think that's how the bylaw.
It should, to my opinion, it should be restricted per property.
Per property.
Like
Don't confuse.
I have 7 apartment. I would not want to see 28 dogs in the.
No, but I'd like a little bit of clarification there.
Yeah, it should
Yeah.
be.
But that's not in the zoning bylaw, that's in our bylaw.
Animal
Yeah,
control.
don't confuse the zoning bylaw with your animal control bylaw. You wouldn't be allowed to have a kennel on a property that was zoned to have an apartment building. That would have to be in an R2 zone, and you're not going to permit a kennel in an R2 zone. Right? It would have to be, you'd have to be able to find an apartment building in a rural zone before you would be able to determine whether or not each dwelling unit had a kennel in it, right? You're just not going to find that situation.
In the village you could. In a village you could. Maybe not out in the country, but in the village you could find a building that would have 4 apartments.
Yes, but that under the zoning, a kennel wouldn't be permitted. A building with 4 apartments would be in an R2 zone, and an R2 zone doesn't permit a kennel.
Thank you.
Yeah, but does it permit to have 4 dogs per apartment though? That would be our
That's the animal control.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Just for clarification. Question.
Okay.
What about the ones that already have kennels? What's happening to them about the new restrictions? Does it apply to them or only to the new ones?
No, the restrictions for a kennel um, is essentially the same as in your existing zoning bylaw. So if there is a kennel out there that's legal, that's in a rural zone and either is legal non-conforming or is a legal permitted use under the zoning, it would be allowed to continue to operate.
Thank you.
So, and if anyone wanted to establish a new kennel, they would then have to meet the regulations in your new zoning bylaw.
Okay, well, we can go to a different subject now. I think we
I think we could, we've talked about that quite a
talked
bit.
quite a bit there on dogs, kennel.
Okay.
Any other concern that was pointed? Jesse, as-tu d'autres concerns que tu as des gens qui t'ont approché? Non?
Non.
Amy, est-ce que tu avais d'autres concerns?
Mais on peut peut-être passer les gens qui
Ok.
sont là.
Madame Bergeron, si vous voulez, aviez-vous des concerns sur le zoning bylaw actuel?
Ouais, ben j'ai quelques questions, si vous me permettez.
Oui.
Oui, bonjour.
Bonjour.
Moi, j'essayais de comprendre les termes hobby farm puis livestock facilities. Est-ce que c'est défini en quelque part? Qu'est-ce que vous considérez comme étant un hobby farm puis un livestock facility?
Juste une minute, Madame Bergeron. Doug, are you, just parce que le monsieur Grant, il est peut-être anglophone, are you okay to the question in French, Doug, or you want to?
Yeah, I think I understood that one, the difference between a livestock operation and a hobby farm.
Yes. Oh, and yeah, I'm sorry. Did I ask it in English or in French? I didn't realize.
My
Yeah.
French is really lousy.
Oh, you can go in English. No problem at all.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Difference between a hobby farm and a livestock facility. Yes.
Okay,
Please.
a hobby farm places a limit on the number of animals that can be kept so that,
Yeah.
that they would be permitted not as a commercial farming operation, but as a hobby farm. So the size of the barn is limited if you're, say you have horses, so that it's limited to the extent that it is meant for the personal recreational use primarily of the owner of the property. It's not meant to be an active farm, and that's why the limitations are in there on the size of the barn or any accessory buildings that are used to keep livestock. And what happens then is that so you're limited because you could be in a residential or an area with number of houses. You still have to meet the MDS requirements of the province minimum distance separation.
On est parti les deux. Là.
A hobby farm to not have to meet.
Can you hear me, Doug? Hello? Madame Bergeron? Okay.
Which are meant to be a business.
Okay. Doug, I think we couldn't hear
Okay,
you for a
but
while. I don't know if
confusing
Madame
then is-
Bergeron got all of it.
Oui.
Okay, nous ça a coupé
Yeah, I
ici,
did
mon-
actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was confidential discussion between you and him. Then we couldn't hear you.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
I got it all also. I heard
Okay.
everything.
Yeah. So can I ask a related question?
Yeah, go ahead. It's time for
In
that.
because there's no, like, I understand the spirit of hobby farms, so you're not running a business, it's just a small farm with maybe just a few horses. But if I want to know how many horses you can actually keep in a rural area, I can't find the information anywhere.
Well, what you can keep in your hobby farm is has to meet the MDS formula requirements.
Okay.
If the property is really small, then by definition, your hobby farm is going to have to be small because it's the only way you're going to meet the MDS calculations for livestock units.
Okay. So, and where is that information?
Just a sec here.
Well, you can search it up. You can do the calculations on the Ontario government website. Just type in on Google MDS calculations, and you can just enter the type of livestock you have, their weight, and the type of manure, the way you store the manure, and the software will do the calculations for you and will tell you the distance that the hobby farm needs to be from another dwelling or from another
Okay.
property.
Okay, so it's not meant to be in the bylaw. It's not something that you forgot to include. It's just in a different.
Yeah, it's just, we've identified it as a land use, which is different from agriculture. And that's primarily because it's small scale. It's meant as a hobby for the personal use of the of the landowner. And so in that circumstance, a smaller lot size would be permitted, but you still have to meet all the MDS requirements. So
Okay.
if your hobby farm starts getting too big, you can't meet the MDS, then you have to cut it back. You're not allowed to expand it indefinitely.
Understand.
So just.
Okay, so hobby farm is minimum 0.4 acres, and then in 13.3 it says agricultural and hobby farm, the minimum lot area shall be 4 hectares.
Oh, sorry, section, did you say 13?
Yeah, 13.3. It said 13.3 number 2, it says agriculture and hobby farm, so it's minimum 4 hectares, so about 10 acres.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Now, there was just a question there, on the size of the building on there, on the 10 acres. That some places, farms have sold, the house and the property, because the farmer doesn't need it. So there's sometimes a large barn there. That does not affect the hobby farm.
No, a hobby farm is meant to be a small recreational use on your residential property. The main use of the property is that's where your residence is, and it allows you to have your own small personal farm. It usually means horses, but not always. And that's something that's completely different from an agricultural use.
Are you okay with all that, Renee?
Yes, kind of. It's just that I seem to remember from the former bylaw that it was a little more precise in terms of species, and now it's more general. Is it?
Yes, that's right. That's right. In the old bylaw, you were allowed a certain amount of, let's say, horses if you had a lot that was X amount of acres.
Yeah. And I think you couldn't keep pigs in a rural, and now there's no mention of pigs, and that's why I was curious to know why the change was made.
Well, the minimum distance separation formula
Takes
really
that into account.
Takes everything into account, and I think it's simpler that way.
I guess so.
Yeah, that's kind of the intent, to simplify it, but make sure that MDS is brought into it so that it can't get bigger than what it's supposed to be.
Okay.
And the MDS is Ontario law, so it's a provincial law.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
You're welcome.
Aller avec les questions du conseil.
I have no other people from public right now that has concerns. Maybe we can go to each member of council, see if they have questions.
Des questions?
Non, pas moi. Moi, j'ai pas de questions.
Okay. I have one. After we approve, council approves this booklet, if there's changes we want to make, is it possible?
The answer to that is yes. If there's changes that you want to see as a result of tonight's open house, we can discuss those and we can then revise the bylaw. And we're going to do that for the kennels to increase the distance separation to 200 meters. So I will do that. I will make that change. If there's anything else arising from tonight's meeting that looks like it's a good idea and appropriate to do, I'll make those changes. And then the same thing will happen as a result of the public meeting that's going to be coming up in February. You are likely to receive comments. Some of those comments will be from the general public. Some will be from the agencies that have been circulated with the zoning bylaw. They may come back, the ministry might come back and say, we suggest you change this regulation to something else. And all of those things can be considered. And if council agrees with all of that, then we will revise the bylaw, and that revised bylaw will then be taken to council to be passed. So there is time for changes to be made.
And after it's been approved, then it would need to go through a zoning amendment.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, once it's passed by council, then any change to the bylaw after that would have to go through a zoning bylaw amendment.
And a public notice?
Yes.
Okay, fine. My question is answered.
So if no other comments from council?
No.
Okay, Amy, so that'll be it, Grant, for tonight.
Would there be any likelihood that someone might try to call in or log on later?
Nobody else has.
Nobody has expressed right now there, except Madame Bergeron. And we had that resident that had talked to me and Jesse about the dog kennel. Other than that, we have.
Il y a Monsieur Nicolas, mais il est dans le prochain public meeting.
Il n'y a pas pour ça.
Ben, il voulait avoir les deux, mais il a débarqué, fait qu'il doit pas
There was
avoir.
another person that connected earlier, but then he left. How long did we publish that it was an open meeting for them?
25 days at least.
No, but tonight?
Pour ce soir.
It was scheduled to be open for discussion for how long
30
tonight?
minutes.
An hour and a half.
Okay, so. I guess Grant, maybe we'll move to our meeting,
Public meeting.
public meeting, and if we have some concern, we may contact you again or tonight, or is that?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll just stay logged on,
Okay.
okay, and then I can come back.
Okay,
Do you
great.
have
Wait,
do you have a public meeting scheduled for a zoning bylaw amendment tonight or no?
yeah, we have one at 7 o'clock. That was for the mister that was just connected earlier, Mr. Nicola.
Nicola?
Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
maybe you should stay on for him.
No, but it's another meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I spoke to Amy about that one a little bit this afternoon. We haven't heard, I don't think, we haven't heard back from either the applicant or the surveyor. But I know that Amy and I were talking about, eventually needing a site plan, approval for the kind of the commercial components of this proposal because it's so complex. not necessarily large scale, but it's a complicated use that's being proposed.
We'll discuss
And that-
about it in the next meeting.
I'm sorry,
Okay,
what
I'm
was-
gonna say goodbye. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye, merci.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
So is there anything that you want to talk to me about the Nicola one?
We're gonna go into the next meeting because he's probably gonna be present. He asked me for the link.
Peux-tu répéter, Amy? Ça a coupé.
We're gonna go into the next meeting because he's gonna have the link and he's gonna be with us probably.
Okay, so I will just leave this open and I'll be kind of hanging around. And if you need me for anything else, I'll be here.
Okay, but I think because I have to switch meetings, it's probably gonna log you off.
Oh, okay. So what I will do is I'll come back on, say, in a half hour to see if this meeting,
Can we send, on peut-y envoyer l'invitation le même que t'as
I
envoyé?
can send you
She
the
could send
invitation.
you the invitation the same as for the other meeting. Then you'd be,
Oh, okay.
You'd be live with Mr. Nicola if he asks questions.
okay, that sounds good.
Okay,
So if Amy will send me that link, I will then log into that meeting.
okay. Thank
Okay?
you. Yes.
Okay.
Faire ça, Amy. Jacob va faire ça. Tu peux arrêter l'enregistrement si tu veux, on a le temps là.